This legendary manga is over twice as long as One Piece, and you will never get to read it. Golgo 13 is a hugely popular manga series about an assassin named Duke Togo. The series has been in serialization since 1969, and at over 200 volumes is the oldest manga still in publication. Well, if it's so popular, why isn't it big here in the US? The truth is, publishers are unlikely to license stories like Golgo 13 because they don't want to risk licensing long-running manga that they don't know will be popular. Sometimes publishers get around this by breaking up the story into arcs, but for something as long as Golgo, realistically the only way you're going to get to read it in its entirety is if you learn Japanese. You can't even find fan translations of Golgo online, and the only way you're going to get to experience it in English is by picking up some of these greatest hits anthologies published by Viz in the 2000s. Luckily, I was able to get my hands on a little under half of these volumes, and there was a lot about this 50-year-old series that surprised me. One thing this series is not is an action-packed adventure serial. While the action scenes read briskly, it can get very talky and detailed, especially with the stories concerning political intrigue and foreign governments. A lot of the earlier stories are clearly influenced by the Cold War period they were written in, and while Golgo isn't written with a particular political slant, mangaka Takeo Saito takes great care in getting the real-world details right to explore the ideological complexities of the time as accurately as possible. There's no overarching story in Golgo, at least from what I've read. Each episode is basically like a movie that gets told over the course of 10-ish chapters. This makes you feel like you're watching a gritty crime movie from the 1970s. From the establishing shots at the beginning of each scene, to seeing Golgo stare down some dude he's about to kill, you can tell how much Saito was inspired by film from that period, and his trademark style apparently did not change until his death in 2021. The main character Golgo is about as on the nose as you could get. He looks like a stoic, no-nonsense assassin, but with a moral code, which is exactly what he is. His appeal reminded me a lot of Superman in that he doesn't have any weaknesses, but it's when that invulnerability gets played with that stories get interesting. He often takes a backseat to the supporting characters in a particular arc, and in a lot of stories, he's hardly even in them at all. The manga is essentially a sandbox for crime noir, for better or for worse. My favorite storyline I read was about a nuclear reactor that's melting down, and Golgo gets roped up in the workers' attempt to stop it. After an accident inside the reactor, the direct supervisor recommends that its opening be delayed, but the top brass refuses to halt progress and spend the money to investigate it. The struggle between the blue-collar workers and their upper management is portrayed with nuance, and it isn't as black and white as you might expect. The corporate leadership isn't just rushing their project to save money, but due to external pressures and expectations, much like how safety corners get cut in real life. This speaks to the deftness of Saito's writing, and I think that's a big part of why Golgo retains its impact after all these years. Now, if you want a taste of one of the most culturally significant manga ever, I highly recommend tracking down some of these books, or at least buying the digital versions online. But if you want to read the whole story from start to finish, then get ready to learn Japanese.